Good evening, and welcome. Tonight we delve into a profoundly complex and deeply divisive issue: the legal framework surrounding abortion and reproductive rights. Should the law explicitly protect these rights, or should it prioritize the potential life of the fetus? Joining us to explore this multifaceted topic are two distinguished guests with contrasting perspectives. Dr. Isabella Rossi, a staunch advocate for reproductive freedom, argues for robust legal protections grounded in bodily autonomy and healthcare equity, and Mr. Samuel Adebayo, who contends that the law must safeguard the unborn, emphasizing the moral status of the fetus. We anticipate an intellectually rigorous and respectful C1 level discussion. Dr. Rossi, would you please begin with your opening statement?
Thank you, Ms. Reed. The question before us is indeed fundamental. I contend that the legal protection of abortion and comprehensive reproductive rights is not merely a matter of policy preference, but an essential pillar of individual liberty, human rights, and gender equality. At its core, this debate hinges upon the principle of bodily autonomy, the inherent right of every individual to make decisions concerning their own body and health, free from coercive state interference. Denying or severely restricting access to abortion represents a profound violation of this autonomy, effectively subordinating an individual's life, health, and future prospects to a legislative mandate. Furthermore, the ramifications of restrictive legislation are not borne equally across society. Such laws invariably and disproportionately impact marginalized communities, including women of color, those with lower socioeconomic status, and individuals in rural areas, exacerbating existing inequities in healthcare access and outcomes. This isn't solely about abortion. It's about reproductive justice. Access to safe and legal abortion must be understood as an indispensable component of comprehensive reproductive healthcare. It is intrinsically linked to maternal health, family well-being, and overall public health. Criminalizing or obstructing access does not eliminate abortion. It merely drives it underground, leading to unsafe procedures and preventable deaths and injuries. International human rights frameworks increasingly recognize reproductive rights as fundamental human rights. Treaty bodies and courts worldwide have affirmed that denying access to essential reproductive health care, including abortion, can constitute violations of rights to life, health, privacy, and freedom from discrimination, and cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment. Therefore, enshrining legal protections is not only consistent with, but mandated by, evolving global standards of human dignity and jurisprudence. It is about trusting individuals to make deeply personal decisions and ensuring they have the necessary healthcare support to do so safely and with dignity.
Thank you, Dr. Rossi. Mr. Adebayo, we now welcome your opening statement.
Thank you, Ms. Reed. While I acknowledge the complexities raised by Dr. Rossi, I must frame this discussion from a different ethical starting point: the profound moral status of the unborn child. The central tenet of my position is the conviction that human life possesses inherent value from conception and consequently deserves the full protection of our laws. To deliberately terminate a pregnancy is, from this perspective, the termination of a unique, developing human life, an act that society has a compelling interest, indeed a duty, to prevent. The concept of bodily autonomy, while significant, cannot be considered absolute when the exercise of that autonomy directly results in the ending of another distinct human existence. Our legal and ethical frameworks routinely recognize limits on autonomy where harm to others is concerned. The crux of this debate lies in whether we recognize the unborn as others deserving of protection. I argue emphatically that we must. The scientific reality is that from the moment of fertilization, a genetically distinct human organism exists, embarking on a continuous process of development. To arbitrarily designate a later point, such as viability or birth, as the threshold for legal protection is ethically problematic and lacks a consistent biological or philosophical basis. The potential for life is present from the beginning, and our legislative responsibility should be to shield that potential. Furthermore, advocating against legal protection for abortion does not equate to abandoning pregnant individuals. On the contrary, it necessitates a redoubled societal commitment to providing comprehensive support systems, robust prenatal care, financial assistance, accessible adoption services, and postpartum support for both parent and child. Promoting a culture that values every life means ensuring that choosing life is a genuinely viable and supported option. The ethical imperative, therefore, is twofold: to protect the unborn child's nascent right to life, and to concurrently build a society that compassionately supports pregnant individuals and families facing challenging circumstances. Legal frameworks should reflect this dual commitment, upholding the sanctity of life from its earliest stage.
Thank you both for those comprehensive opening statements. Let us move into our first round of discussion, focusing on the central tension between bodily autonomy and fetal rights. Dr. Rossi, Mr. Adebayo posits that bodily autonomy is not absolute when another potential life is involved. How do you reconcile your emphasis on autonomy with his assertion regarding the moral status and rights of the fetus?
Thank you. The assertion that fetal rights supersede a pregnant person's bodily autonomy is legally and ethically fraught. Firstly, the legal status of a fetus as a person with full constitutional rights is not established in jurisprudence in most liberal democracies, including historically in the U.S. prior to recent shifts. Compelling someone to carry a pregnancy to term against their will involves a significant infringement on their fundamental rights, liberty, privacy, and bodily integrity, rights explicitly recognized and protected. No existing legal principle compels an individual to subject their body to significant physical burdens, risks, and life-altering consequences for the sake of another, even a born person needing an organ transplant. To impose this uniquely on pregnant individuals represents a form of gender discrimination. While the potential for life is acknowledged, granting it legal rights equivalent or superior to the pregnant person creates an untenable legal and ethical conflict, effectively treating the pregnant person as a vessel.
Mr. Adebayo, you argue for the protection of potential life from conception. At what specific point, if any, do you believe fetal rights should definitively supersede the pregnant person's autonomy, and what is the philosophical or biological justification for that specific threshold?
My position is grounded in the continuity of human development. The transition from zygote to embryo to fetus is a seamless process. There is no single, non-arbitrary biological event after conception that suddenly confers personhood or a right to life that wasn't present moments before. Therefore, the most consistent and ethically defensible position is that the right to life, and the corresponding need for legal protection, begins at conception when a new, genetically distinct human entity comes into being. While I deeply empathize with the challenges faced by pregnant individuals, the right to life is arguably the most fundamental right, upon which all others depend. Therefore, the claim to bodily autonomy, while critically important, cannot ethically extend to the right to end the life of another distinct human being, regardless of developmental stage. The justification is the inherent value of human life itself, not a specific developmental milestone like viability, which is dependent on medical technology.
So, considering these deeply held, contrasting views rooted in different interpretations of rights and personhood, how should legal frameworks realistically navigate these competing claims? Dr. Rossi, perhaps you first?
Legal frameworks must prioritize the established rights and well-being of the pregnant person. This involves upholding the right to make autonomous decisions about one's body and health care, informed by medical advice and personal circumstances, without state coercion. Legislation should focus on ensuring access to comprehensive reproductive health care, including contraception and safe, legal abortion, while also addressing the socioeconomic factors that influence reproductive choices. Criminalizing abortion is demonstrably harmful public policy.
Mr. Adebayo, your perspective on the legal navigation?
The law must serve as a guardian for the most vulnerable, and arguably none are more vulnerable than the unborn. Legal frameworks should explicitly recognize the personhood, or, at minimum, the protectable interest in the life of the fetus from conception. This necessitates laws restricting or prohibiting elective abortion, coupled with robust legal and social structures that support pregnant individuals and promote alternatives like adoption. The law should reflect a societal commitment to the value of every human life, born and unborn.
Let's broaden the scope now to societal implications and healthcare access. Dr. Rossi, what are the demonstrable socioeconomic consequences, particularly for vulnerable populations, when access to abortion and broader reproductive health care is restricted?
The consequences are severe and well documented. Restricting abortion access disproportionately harms women in poverty, women of color, and young people, often forcing them to carry unwanted pregnancies to term. This can perpetuate cycles of poverty, limit educational and economic opportunities, and negatively impact the health and well-being of both the parent and subsequent children. Studies like the Turnaway study have shown that women denied abortions experience worse financial outcomes, poorer mental health, and are more likely to remain in abusive relationships compared to those who received abortions. Furthermore, restricting access often leads to increases in unsafe abortions, particularly in regions with limited resources, contributing significantly to maternal mortality and morbidity. It also strains public health resources and undermines efforts towards gender equality and economic development.
Mr. Adebayo, you advocate for alternatives like adoption and societal support. Realistically, how effective are these alternatives in addressing the complex reasons individuals seek abortion? And what level of societal investment is truly necessary to make these viable alternatives for everyone facing an unwanted pregnancy?
Adoption is a profoundly loving choice, but I concede it is not a simple solution for every situation, nor is it the primary focus for many women considering abortion. However, the perceived inadequacy of alternatives should not justify legally sanctioning abortion. Instead, it underscores the urgent need for a radical expansion of societal support. This means universal access to high-quality prenatal and postnatal care, affordable housing, childcare assistance, paid parental leave, and robust mental health services. It requires significant public and private investment to create an environment where carrying a pregnancy to term, even in difficult circumstances, is genuinely feasible and supported. While the cost is substantial, it reflects the value we should place on both the life of the child and the well-being of the mother. The effectiveness hinges on our collective willingness to provide comprehensive, non-judgmental support, making the choice for life a truly empowered one.
Dr. Rossi, how does the legal status of abortion intersect with broader issues of healthcare accessibility and equity?
The intersection is profound. Abortion restrictions are often part of a broader pattern of underfunding and undermining comprehensive reproductive and sexual health services, including contraception access, sex education, and STI prevention and treatment. When abortion is singled out for legal restriction or exclusion from health insurance coverage, it stigmatizes the procedure and creates significant barriers, even where it remains technically legal. These barriers, mandatory waiting periods, targeted regulation of abortion providers, trap laws, funding restrictions like the Hyde Amendment in the U.S. context, disproportionately affect the same marginalized groups already facing systemic healthcare inequities. Ensuring abortion access is thus inseparable from the larger fight for healthcare equity, and ensuring that all individuals, regardless of income or background, can access the full spectrum of necessary reproductive health care.
Thank you both. We now move to closing statements. Each of you will have approximately 250 words. Mr. Adebayo, please proceed with your closing remarks.
Thank you. Throughout this discussion, the fundamental principle guiding my perspective has been the inherent worth and right to life of the unborn child, commencing at conception. While the challenges faced by pregnant individuals are real and demand our utmost compassion and support, they cannot ethically justify the intentional termination of a distinct human life. Dr. Rossi eloquently defends bodily autonomy, yet this right, however vital, encounters its limit when it involves the destruction of another human being. Our laws must reflect a consistent ethic of life, protecting the vulnerable at every stage. Arguments invoking socioeconomic hardship or potential future difficulties, while valid concerns, point towards the need for greater societal solidarity and robust support systems, not towards the legalization of lethal measures against the unborn. We must champion policies that empower women and families, making adoption a readily available and fully supported option, and ensuring comprehensive care throughout pregnancy and beyond. True progress lies not in facilitating abortion, but in building a civilization of love that welcomes every life and provides the resources necessary for both mother and child to flourish. Therefore, I urge a legal framework that unequivocally protects life from conception, recognizing the humanity of the unborn and our collective responsibility to safeguard it.
Thank you, Mr. Adebayo. Dr. Rossi, your closing statement.
Thank you. This debate ultimately centers on whether we trust individuals to make fundamental decisions about their own lives and bodies, or whether we allow the state to impose its will in the most intimate aspects of human existence. Protecting access to abortion and comprehensive reproductive health care is indispensable for individual liberty, gender equality, and public health. Bodily autonomy is not a privilege to be granted or revoked based on pregnancy status. It is a fundamental human right. Mr. Adebayo's focus on fetal personhood, while stemming from sincere conviction, leads to a dangerous subjugation of the rights, health, and lives of pregnant individuals. Assigning legal rights to a fetus superior to those of the person carrying it has no precedent in established law regarding bodily integrity and creates untenable conflicts. The demonstrable consequences of restricting abortion access, increased maternal mortality, exacerbated socioeconomic inequality, and the denial of essential health care cannot be ignored. While improving social supports is crucial, it is not a substitute for the right to decide whether or not to carry a pregnancy to term. A just and compassionate society ensures that individuals are empowered to make their own reproductive decisions, supported by access to the full range of healthcare options, including safe, legal abortion. We must uphold legal frameworks that respect autonomy, promote health equity, and trust individuals to navigate these complex personal choices.
Thank you, Dr. Rossi, and thank you, Mr. Adebayo, for a deeply thoughtful and articulate exchange on this challenging subject. You have both presented compelling arguments, highlighting the core tension between the principle of bodily autonomy and the moral status attributed to the fetus, as well as the significant societal and healthcare implications involved. The perspectives shared tonight underscore the profound legal, ethical, and social dimensions of reproductive rights. We hope this discussion has provided our audience with valuable insights for their own reflection on this critical issue. Thank you for joining us. Good evening.